Have you noticed how prices rise like yeast while your salary crawls behind them? How economic news now sounds like battlefield reports? And how, despite the miracles of the 21st century, most people work more hours just to stand still. There is a reason. It hides inside a number the human mind refuses to grasp. Every country on earth lives on debt, not a few, all. Right now, in December of year 2025, the United States owes more than $38 trillion. The highest figure in human history. If you stack $100 bills into a single pile, that tower would reach into space. Imagine looking up at that stack. You feel small. You feel trapped. The European Union is drowning in 14 trillion. Japan carries 9 trillion. Even the richest oil monarchies, even industrial giants like China and Germany, all in it, all up to their necks. Here's where logic breaks. If everyone owes, who is the lender? Martians? Because a balance must balance. If someone owes, someone else must hold oath, but no one does. Not households, not corporations, not governments. Debt isn't just digits on a bank server. It is an invisible cage wrapped around the planet. Every war fought, every skyscraper raised, every loaf of bread you buy. All of it sits on top of I owe us. Pull this thread and the horror reveals itself. The world doesn't owe a mysterious villain. We built a global pyramid where old debts get soothed by new debts, and like every pyramid, it stands only as long as belief stands. Why does this matter to you? Because your rent, your savings, your retirement, your peace of mind, they all live inside that belief. Think about an investor on a Tuesday morning. Coffee in hand, markets blinking red, fear whispers, sell now, greed counters, panic shouts, get out! This is how debt breathes. Through our choices, through our trust or the loss of it. One click at a time. Think about a young family at the checkout. Prices up again, same cart, less left over. They don't see a spreadsheet, they feel the weight. That is debt, silent, everywhere, always hungry. You hear officials promise growth, stability, a soft landing, and sometimes they are right. For a while, but the machine needs constant feeding, more borrowing to pay yesterday's borrowing, more hope to cover yesterday's hope. Do you see the pattern? To understand how we walked into this trap with a global burden around $330 trillion, we have to go back. Back to the moment money stopped being metal and became a promise, a belief, a story we all tell each other, and the first stop is war. The idea of living on credit was not born from abundance. It was born from desperation, from drums and smoke and empty treasuries. In the year 1694, England was at war with France. The treasury was bare, soldiers needed pay, supplies needed buying. Winter did not care. Enemies did not wait. Picture the scene. Ministers pale in candlelight. Ledgers open. Columns of numbers that do not add up. Commanders demanding coin. Merchants refusing to deliver without it. Rumors in the streets. Confidence cracking. A nation on the edge. What do you do when there is no gold left, but the war still rages? When the metal in the vault cannot match the promises already made? You make a new promise. You turn time itself into money. You borrow from the future to survive the present. This is the moment the modern story began. Not with a celebration, with a crisis, not with wealth, with a wound. From there, debt became the glue. First for armies, then for cities, then for everything. It looked clever, efficient, humane even. Why suffer now if you can? This is the psychology that runs the world. Fear pushes us to borrow relief today. Greed nudges us to borrow more for a bigger tomorrow. Panic makes us doubt the very promises that keep the structure standing. So prices rise, wages chase. The news sounds like, and people work harder just to stay put. The number is vast, it is cold, it does not care. But you should, because inside that number is a choice. Believe, and the pyramid holds. Stop believing, and it shakes. Back to 1694, England, war with France, treasury empty, soldiers unpaid, the country at the brink. That is where the fuse was lit. That is where money stopped being weight and became faith. A king was cornered, war drained his coffers, pride gave way to panic, desperation opens doors that prudence keeps shut. So he made a deal with the devil, not horns and pitchforks, a consortium of rich London merchants, men who smelled fear. Men who knew how to turn fear into profit. The scheme was simple and brilliant. The merchants handed the king gold, enough to fund the cannons, armies, and ships. In return, the king granted them a private office, the Bank of England, not just a name, a new power. The power to print paper promises, receipts that would be treated as money, words on paper, backed by the crown, backed by taxes. Here was the masterstroke. The king gave the bank the right to collect taxes from the people, to pay the interest on that debt. Cash flows, guaranteed by the sword. That is how the government bond was born. For the first time, a state could spend money, and bankers gained a stream of income that never sleeps. Paid by bakers, farmers, craftsmen, paid by the public forever. Yield turned into wealth. Others copied it. France did not resist the temptation. The Netherlands refined it. Later, the United States turned it into an art form. Debt stopped being shameful. Debt became a weapon. Do you see the shift? Empires no longer needed to plunder ships or drag gold across oceans. No need for bloody raids, just a beautiful piece of paper, a promise to pay. A seal, a signature, and the world delivered its resources voluntarily. Greed did the work that cannons once did. Fast forward to the end of 2025. The United States owes roughly $38 trillion, a number so large it feels big numbers numb the mind. That is how illusions survive. In the former Soviet space, there is a popular story. America is sold to China. Beijing can crash the dollar with one phone call. It sounds dramatic. It flatters our fear. It is also dangerous nonsense. Why does this myth live? Because it makes the world simple. Villain, button, collapse. Look at the facts. Out of that gigantic sum, China holds about 2%. Japan holds around 3, small slices of a massive pie. So who holds the rest? Who has America by the throat? The answer surprises people. America owes most of it to America, not a foreign emperor, domestic institutions, pension funds that buy safe yield. Insurance companies that need predictable cash flows. Banks that live on spread. And above them, the most important player, the Federal Reserve. Here is how the carousel spins. The U.S. Treasury issues a bond, a formal IOU. The Federal Reserve presses a button, trillions if needed. Those fresh dollars buy the bond. The government spends the money on the military, on benefits, on roads. The cycle completes. Then it begins again, a snake eating its own tail. Clean, efficient, hypnotic. They borrow from themselves and call it stability. They issue promises to pay promises. Wealth appears on screens. Balances rise, confidence returns until it doesn't. Why do investors play along? Safety, they say, the full faith and credit. Fear of missing yield pushes them in. Fear of volatility locks them in. The herd whispers, everyone holds these. The mind finds comfort in the crowd. Panic sleeps while the coupons clip. But understand the psychology. The bond is a story about trust, taxes, and time. The state can spend what it does not have today because it can tax you tomorrow. The banker earns because you believe. You believe because everyone around you believes. This is not magic, it is plumbing. But plumbing can flood a city when no one watches the valves. The loop looks harmless, the numbers look distant, the screens look calm. That is how the illusion sustains itself. The old king made a deal to survive a war. The modern state makes the same deal to survive every election cycle. The tool has not changed. Institutional faith, taxes as the engine, and a carousel that never stops unless fear returns. When you hear the myth about one call in the funds, the banks, and the central bank, the risk is not a foreign phone call. The risk is the mirror. The moment the crowd looks and asks, what exactly are we holding? Until then, the wheel turns, the bond pays, the screens glow, and the snake keeps eating its tail. The left hand lends to the right, and the invoice lands on the table of children not yet born. That is the trick, and the world nods along. Why does it tolerate this? Why has the dollar not turned to dust? The hinge moved half. Before that, money had a leash. Gold, real metal, cold, heavy, unforgiving. You could walk into a bank and trade paper for bars, not tomorrow, not on a promise, on the spot. That chain restrained politicians. Appetite met reality. You cannot. Then came 1971. The Vietnam War burned money like dry leaves. A president looked at the books. Not enough metal, so he called it temporary. He severed the tie. The gold window closed. That temporary has now lasted more than 5 decades. Money turned into a story, fiat. Backed not by metal, backed by belief and by aircraft carriers. Belief is fragile. It can vanish in a headline. It can crack in a single speech. So they reinforced the story. They engineered a new anchor. In the 70s, a quiet handshake with Saudi Arabia. Protection for the royal family, security, weapons, stability. In return, oil would be sold only for dollars. Only. Checkmate. Every nation needs oil. No oil, no trucks, no heat, no lights. To buy oil, you needed dollars. To get dollars, you needed to sell something to America. Cars, copper, coffee, code. Whatever you had, you shipped it. In exchange, you collected green paper and parked it in reserves. Not because you loved it, because you had to. Survival demands fuel. Fuel demands dollars. The demand for dollars became manufactured, global, relentless. That gave Washington. They could spend and the pain would not explode at home like a grenade. It would drift outward. It would thin out across oceans and borders. An export with no container ships. You ask if they print trillions. Why does a loaf of bread in their supermarkets not cost $1 million like in Zimbabwe? The answer is because the dollar is the world's currency. When the press starts in Washington, those bills do not sit still. They fly, they seep in, they settle contracts, they pass through oil tankers, cargo ships, and pipelines. China uses dollars, Russia uses dollars. The Arab world uses dollars. Europe uses dollars, not out of love, out of necessity. America sends paper promises. The rest of the world ships back real things: oil, metal, grain, hours of human life on factory floors. The exchange looks clean on a screen. It is not clean in reality. One side gives resources, the other gives claims, claims that expand with a keystroke. Inflation spreads like butter, scraped thin over the whole planet. A little here, a little there, quiet, persistent. You feel it in your city when the checkout beep stings a little more. In Kazan, in Almaty, in your town, fewer items in the cart. More money at the register. You did not vote in Washington. You did not ask for the printing press to hum at night, but you pay. We all pay. That is the price of a global dollar. Do you see the pattern? The system runs on psychology, not equations. Belief props up paper. Power protects belief. Politicians crave an easy fix. The press gives it to them. Investors chase the story because everyone else chases it. And when a story becomes everyone's story, it feels like truth until it doesn't. Before 1971, a vault door closed the argument. After 1971, a promise replaced the door. To fortify that promise, oil was chained to the dollar. That forced the world to hoard green slips like life jackets. Not because they float forever, because you cannot swim without one when the sea. It does not simply fill pockets on Main Street, it leaks into every port and every pipeline. It buys oil, it buys time, it buys compliance. And the bill shows up later, not in one place, everywhere, in small bites, in quiet frustration, in the sense that your salary buys less each season, even if the interest lands on your receipt. One country runs the press. The whole planet splits the tab. That is the engine. That is the banquet. And like most banquets, the loudest table does not wash the dishes. There is a side effect to this system that no one explains on television. It has a name, the Cantillon effect. It is the quiet law of money that shows why the rich get richer while everyone else falls behind. New money does not rain down on everyone at once. It arrives in waves. First stop, the big banks, the big corporations, the players closest to power. They get it early, they get it cheap, they buy stocks, real estate, and land at yesterday's prices, then the prices climb. Asset owners watch their net worth jump. They feel smart, they feel safe. By the time that same new money trickles down as a paycheck to a teacher or an engineer, the shelves tell a different story. Groceries cost more. Rent is up. A car is out of reach. Why does this happen? Because inflation hits the real world after it already boosted the paper world. The ladder you're climbing keeps moving. Inflation is not just a number on a chart. It is a transfer mechanism. It shifts wealth from late receivers to early receivers, from wage earners to asset holders, from the many to the few. It is a hidden tax. No one voted for it, yet you pay it every day, at the register, in your rent, in the shrinking power of your savings. And the picture is darker than one headline about $38 trillion in government debt. That number is the tip of the iceberg. Above the waterline, easy to count, easy to quote, but below the surface lives the monster, the derivatives market, bets, contracts on top of contracts, a shadow market. No one knows the true size. The estimates reach $1 quadrillion. Let that sink in. That is dozens of times larger than the entire global economy. It is a vast casino draped over the world. Wagers on interest rates, on currency moves, on whether a country will default. If one large domino falls, the chain does not stop. Margin calls, forced selling. Liquidity evaporates. There is not enough money on earth to plug every hole at once. Do you see the risk? The global economy now behaves like a long-term addict. Cheap credit is the dose. Easy money numbs the pain. Everyone gets hooked. Bank, corporations, governments, investors, households. When the Fed tries to raise rates and take the bottle away, the withdrawal starts fast. Banks wobble, markets crack, companies tumble into bankruptcy court, screens turn red, phones light up, panic spreads. We saw it in 2008. We saw it again in 2020. Different triggers, same pattern. Each time the doctors at the central banks face a choice, and each time they choose the same prescription. Pour gasoline on the fire and call it water. Print more money. Push the problem forward. Hope tomorrow is kinder than today. But we have drifted past a quiet line, the point of no return. The debt is now so large that paying it back is not about courage. This is not conspiracy. This is arithmetic. If the United States tried to make good on every promise, it would need to hand over its entire gross every dollar. No spending on the military, none on healthcare, nothing for pensions, not 1 cent left for schools, roads, or the lights that keep the cities alive. So, what does the investor feel in this world? First, greed. The market is running, neighbors get rich, you want in, then fear. Headlines scream, you want out, then panic. A crash hits, you sell the bottom, then relief. The printers roar, the rally, you buy back higher. Round and round. Why do we do this to ourselves? Because the system rewards those closest to the spigot and punishes those farthest away. Because the money game is not neutral. It has a map. And most people never see it. That is the Cantillon effect at work. That is the hidden tax of inflation. That is the shadow risk sitting under the tip of the debt until the cost of the next dose becomes greater than the pain of the withdrawal. When does that day arrive? When one domino too many, when trust snaps, when arithmetic at last speaks louder than hope. This is a collapse. That is why no one plans to give anything back. The elite have a different plan. It comes in two versions. First path, the old one. History's whisper you keep trying to ignore. Think of ancient Rome. Emperors drowning in debt, one decree after another. And then the trick. Shave the silver. The denarius looks the same. It feels the same, but it buys less. Prices climb. Confidence slips. People start to notice. In the end, the great empire breaks under the weight of its own economic deadness. Why does this matter now? Because the mechanism never died. Today, the file is gone. The keyboard remains. Money is conjured with entries on a screen. Inflation is the polite confession of the I cannot repay, so I will return your money in a weaker form. Half the power, half the future. Your savings melt. Not in a bang, month after month, a little less again. You tell yourself it is temporary. You hope policy will fix it. You wait. That is the trap. This is how the system buys a few more years. It feeds on the quiet sacrifice of savers, on your caution, on your patience. Investors feel it in their bones, the fear, the denial, the nervous laugh when a bill is bigger than last time, the panic click on a price chart. You try to protect, you chase, you overpay, you freeze. Do you see the pattern? But there is a second path, and it is colder, more efficient, more final, the one we are being prepared for now. Central bank digital currencies. Picture this. No cash, no bills in a drawer. No escape to the back pocket, only a digital token in an account at the central bank. The token is programmable. If you do not spend in a month, it disappears. Consumption on a leash, a dial that can be turned. Economists call it precision. Perfect control over demand, a clean model, no friction. Sounds elegant on a whiteboard. In life, it means this. The system decides the pace of your breathing, what you can buy, when you can buy. One policy tweak and the river of money changes course. Not in theory, in your day, in your cart, in your plans. Digital currencies make a reset easy. Old debts can be wiped or converted at a punishing rate. Legacy promises priced down with a keystroke. The public is ushered into a new financial reality. No privacy by default. Every transaction watched by silent code. Spending guided by algorithms. Compliance baked in. Resistance made costly. Sounds dystopian. Tests are already running. Dozens of countries from China to Europe. Pilots, sandboxes, trials with friendly names. A quiet drumbeat. The pitch will be simple when the debt crisis crests. The old system failed. It was inefficient and corrupt. Here is the new one. Safe, digital, instant. Accept it to protect what is left of your savings. Fear will do the rest. In the 21st century, the line between debtor and creditor is blurred to a smudge. Your money in a bank is the bank's promise to you. The bank's money at the central bank is the state's promise to the bank. Layers of I owe us, stacked and braided, a single knot of obligations. Pull one strand and the whole weave shifts. This architecture runs on one word, trust. As long as people believe that tomorrow, until it does not. So ask yourself, what holds your confidence in place? Habit, hope, momentum? Investors break not when the math changes, but when the story breaks. When the crowd looks at the same screen and sees a different future. Now we approach the edge. At the end of 2025, the world is splitting. You can feel it, cracks in the narrative, fractures in supply lines and in minds. One camp will choose the slow burn, inflation as a way of life. The other will choose the switch. Programmable money and perfect oversight. Either way, someone pays. Either way, trust is the currency. The lesson is not new. It is the same lesson Rome tried to teach and we tried not to learn. When debt swallows reality, someone must take the loss. The question is who? And whether you see it coming before the screen tells you who you are, the BRICS countries are building their own payment systems, quietly. Methodically, not out of vanity, out of necessity. Sanctions turn the dollar from a shared utility into a weapon. Now it signals control. Trust melts like spring snow. You feel it. Institutions still speak in calm voices, but the tone has... The global economy is a game of musical chairs. The music speeds up. The circle tightens. The chairs disappear one by one. People laugh at first. Then they run. Then they shove. The question is not when the music stops. The question is simple. What will be in your hands when it does? Real assets. Gold you can weigh. Land that doesn't vanish with a click. Skills no one can confiscate. Production that turns effort into value. Or a neat stack of devalued I owe us we politely call money. Which one feels safer when the lights flicker? Fear? You feel the floor shift. You think maybe it's nothing. That is the hope speaking. Then greed whispers. You reach for yield. You chase convenience. You convince yourself that promises are as good as things. They are not. Debt is theft from the future. We pulled tomorrow into today and called. We consumed the resources of our children and grandchildren and wrote checks with their names on them. It felt painless. It was not. Someone will pay. That is not politics. That is arithmetic of the soul. And when the bubble finally gives up its last breath, the argument will not be. It will be about who can survive in a world where promises mean nothing. Who can stand when contracts become stories and stories buy nothing? Do you see the pattern? Open your wallet. Be honest. Do you hold claims on reality or claims on belief? Could you feed your family with a number on a screen? Could you defend your future with... You do not need to predict the minute the music stops. You need to choose your chair now. Real assets, real skills, real production. Strip it to that. When trust thins, solidity matters. This is the fork in the road. Close the gap between what you think you own and what you actually... You will be asked for collateral. Make sure it is real.